Hello and welcome to my channel, where I'll be telling you all kinds of strange stories ranging from true crime to some much less believable, although just as fascinating, tales. For this video, we have some weird, spooky and downright strange hotel stories. Listen in and see what you think. So back when I was around 8 or 9, me and my family, my aunt, grandma and grandpa, my mum and some of my aunt's friends, went to this beach which is quite famous in the country I live in. It was supposed to be a 3-day and 2-night trip. Everything was fine, but I don't know why I didn't like the hotel we booked at all. It wasn't because of appearance or the hospitality, rather it was because of the creepy feeling I got in there. And it was truly creepy, so creepy that even after so long I clearly remember what happened and what I felt. I did tell my mother that I didn't like the hotel, but she probably thought it was just a child's tantrum or something. I don't remember exactly what we spoke about. So for 2 complete days I suppressed the feeling of someone staring at me, like the feeling someone gets when a person is staring at you with too much intensity. I shook it off, but something happened on the last day of our stay there, and it still creeps me out on different levels. It was night. Our luggage was packed. I was a kid, so I was sharing a room with my mother. We were sleeping, but suddenly the lights went off. My body temperature from birth is very high, so naturally I feel really hot even when the AC is on sometimes. I remember waking up panting. I've woken up because of feeling hot before, but it was nothing like that day. It was a suffocating heat, like something or someone was pressing down on my chest. I felt so damn hot, but I was unable to wake up. I could feel my back being drenched in sweat, but still I was unable to open my eyes. Finally, after a while, I don't remember how long, I managed to open my eyes, and what I saw still haunts me to this day. My feet faced the balcony, and there was a window a bit further away from the door which led to said balcony. The curtains that were actually drawn to prevent the streetlights from entering were pulled open. The window that was closed was now open, and there was a person standing right outside. I couldn't see that person in the darkness, but I still remember those eyes that I couldn't see but I did feel staring back at me. They weren't very kind. Rather, I would say I could freaking feel the malicious intent seeping out from them. I remember trying to scream out loud, but I couldn't. It was like the same feeling of something weighing down on me. I was so scared that I was probably trembling in fear. I don't know for how long it happened, but at some point I remember shutting my eyes tight closed. And that's all I remember from that night. The next morning when I woke up, my mother saw that I was visibly scared, and I hysterically asked her if there was a lights out yesterday. She said there was nothing like that, because she would have known. I told her everything, but she didn't believe it. Every single person I told didn't believe me. Rather, they took it as some kind of nightmare. But honestly speaking, though I was young, I can assure you it wasn't a nightmare. A nightmare can't be that realistic. No one till this day believes me, and I too at some point stopped speaking about it, but I never actually forgot about it, and I don't think I ever will. Maybe to other people this doesn't seem very scary, but I still get nightmares about that night, and I truly hope that I could forget that cursed night, but I just can't. It's literally living in my head, rent-free. It doesn't matter how much I want to kick it out. It just doesn't go away. I used to work at a hotel on the outskirts of Hull as a waiter. We had one of the night porters leave suddenly, and that left the hotel short for a few shifts until they rehired. They asked me if I didn't mind covering, and I accepted. The shifts were 10 p.m. till 7 a.m, and duties would be dealing with late check-ins, setting function rooms up for the following day's events, and a security round. I was doing the odd couple of shifts a week and really enjoyed being able to roam freely around the hotel, working at my own pace. I normally worked with a few other colleagues until they clocked out at between midnight and 2 a.m, function depending, and from then on I had the hotel to myself. From the hour I clocked on and every hour after, I had to do a security round. This meant walking the entire hotel with a scanner, placing it over a magnetic strip that was on every fire door and every room in the hotel. This was for security and insurance purposes to ensure there's no break-ins, fires and so on. First few shifts I followed a checklist of where the strips were. However, after a few times I'd just go on autopilot. On the top floor of the hotel there's a small function room that can fit around 20 people in it called the Johnson Suite. The public entrance was at the end of the corridor, but there was a small fire exit out the left-hand side that led down a spiral staircase that went down the outside to the main kitchen block, which I'd then cut through to do the rest of the security rounds in the kitchen. Normally, when doing the rounds, I'd put my jacket on because up near the Johnson Suite, I always tended to get a bit chilly, but I just put it down to the large windows in the room. One Thursday night when I was working, the hotel was fairly quiet with no functions and the catering staff left around 11:30. I'd already done a couple of security rounds and set about doing my jobs for the evening. The 3 a.m. round is one I will never forget. The sensor strip was at the far back left end of the Johnson Suite as you walk through the main entrance, and there's a light switch on the right-hand side. I walked in as normal and switched on the light, walked alongside the rows of chairs and was heading towards the magnetic strip when out of the corner of my eye I saw a figure. At first thought I assumed it was a guest that had wandered in. It wasn't until I looked up that I saw it was a female figure wearing what looked like old horse riding gear. There was no face to her at all, and it looked as though someone was shining car headlights behind her. A white sort of glow hung around her. I was absolutely petrified and couldn't move. I just stared for around 5 seconds and then backed out of the room and made my way down the spiral staircase to the kitchen. I sat in reception for the rest of the evening as I was too scared to do the rest of the security rounds. The receptionist came in at 6:30 a.m. for the handover and I was still a mess. I told him the story, and I figured it must have been a shadow, or I imagined it. But really, I knew it was definitely something paranormal. I left the hotel shortly afterwards and never returned. "10 years ago, I was a stupid 18-year-old kid who was living with his parents in Flagstaff, Arizona. We moved almost every 3 years due to the nature of my dad's work, and so I got to see most of the country. It was a Tuesday in November when my mum said we were packing up at the apartment and moving to Seattle for what was going to be another year and 2 months. I had a small 300cc motorcycle at the time and decided to hook a GPS and use the time to go on a ride along the west coast. My mother didn't like the idea, but I knew I'd be safe due to personal experience and knowing when and when not to ride. I notified my job that I was going to transfer, threw on my saddlebags, and a day later was on the road. I managed to make it all the way through western Nevada in order to avoid LA traffic and stopped prior to taking the I-5 into California. That evening, I stayed in a Days Inn that had a parking spot specifically for motorcycles and an extremely comfy bed. After breakfast and a talk with the locals, I crossed through Reno into Western California. From there, it was only 4 more hours until I reached Oregon. Luckily, I had time to spare, so I wanted to take some back roads and discover what this dank, damp state had to offer. It was fall, and there was a deep chill in the air. Riding through it sent shivers down my spine like nothing else. November's weather in Oregon is almost identical to that of Pittsburgh during that season. It makes you want to curl up in a ball and sleep for a decade, only to wake up and repeat the process all over again. Eventually, I grew tired enough that I wanted to find somewhere to stay and managed to see a sign advertising a hunting lodge on the side of the road. It was accompanied by a long, steep hill that took what felt like an hour to climb. Though when I reached the top, I was greeted by a large and gorgeous cabin that looked like it was specifically made for weddings, like something ripped out of a fairy tale. Bewildered, I parked my bike, took off my bags, threw a tarp over the bike, which was secured by a bungee cord, and walked inside. There I met a Korean woman who was working the front desk. She spoke perfect English but had a very distinct accent in which she explained to me that I could choose my room due to an abundance of vacancies. I chose room 31, as the entire building was all on one floor that evening. She handed me a key with the tag 31 attached via a keyring and told me to have a good night. I threw all my stuff down and headed to the bathroom to wash up after riding for an entire day. The room itself looked like a cabin. It was absolutely beautiful. The floorboards were all real wood, and even the shower had the same natural wood as the tubs around. I took a shower and then headed to bed and realised that the mattress was incredibly comfortable. I made myself cosy, only to suddenly think that something was off. It wasn't something obvious, but I knew there was some sort of oddity about the place. Still, I was tired. I pushed it to the back of my mind and fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up to find the walls went from a natural brown to a deeper grey, as if they were stained overnight. This wasn't a result of natural lighting versus LED. The room was, without a doubt, a different colour. I shrugged it off. I got all my stuff together, making sure everything was still where I left it. I headed out of the room to find not only had the wood changed colour, but I was on a second floor that previously hadn't existed. The light from the morning sun wasn't permeating the windows of the cabin, and there was no one in sight. I started to freak out, nearly having a panic attack because this wasn't right. Thankfully, there were stairs as I dashed down as fast as I could and made my way to the front desk. I rang the bell once, twice, 3 times. I was breathing heavy and I knew I had to get out of there. No one was coming to check up on me after 10 minutes of waiting, so I dashed out of the doors and into the lot. I ripped the tarp off my bike and looked back at the lodge. It wasn't the same lodge. This was a broken down, abandoned, dirty building that looked as though it was about to be condemned. I didn't want to ask any more questions, and I rode off as fast as I could. That place still haunts me, even to this day. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed the content, click the subscribe and like buttons so you can receive more content like this strange story every week. See you next time.